Bishena. Welcome, everyone, to the Aramaic Wednesday night School of Light, sponsored, of course, by the Noohra Foundation. And, of course, your wonderful donations that you send in to keep this program going. All right. I'm going to open up with the Lord's Prayer in the ancient Aramaic tongue, Jesus' own language, Lishana Aramaya. Shall we pray? Aun washmayadnet kadeshishmak, tese malkuthach, nehwe sevianach, ekanadashmaya appar howlan lach mesunkanen yaumana, washwoklan, howbain, ekanadap, kanan, shwakin lahayawain, la talanisiona, ella pasin min bisha, mithol, dilachi malkutha, Haila Tishbochta La'alam Halmin. Amen. We're going to continue now tonight with the story of creation and Genesis. And tonight, I'm hoping I can do the map now for you. I'm going to share the map, try it again now this time. Here we go. All right. I know you all are seeing it. Let me enlarge it a little bit. All right. So you can read it. This is all of ancient Mesopotamia. Today, this area in here that I am circling, that would be Turkey. And as you go down from Turkey, in this point right about here, this is where the Apostle Paul came from. And then we go down into here. Some of this would be Syria, and then we go down into Israel all along here. Of course, it was called the land of Canaan in the biblical what we call the Old Testament. This is all where this is the Mediterranean, and right about here in Syria, there was a town known as Ugarit. And here is where they found a whole group of ancient writing in the cuneiform, and also statues and pictures of the god that they had, and sitting on a throne and all that, and the god Baal. And then I don't want to get into all those stories here, but this is all the area. So when you begin to read the Bible, this is what you picture, the ancient world. And why do we start here? Actually, there is a lot more in here, but the map doesn't show it because we are actually starting in here. This is the river Euphrates. This is the Euphrates. And Assyria was very dominant in the northern part of Iraq. Today, this part would be Iraq. And in the ancient world, Syria dominated a lot in the north. But when you go in the southern part of Iraq, in the ancient world, this is Greek. This is a Greek word, Mesopotamia. It means the land of the rivers. In Aramaic, we say Beth Nahrain, the house of the rivers, all of these two prominent rivers. And if you know, in the Eden story, it mentions this river, the Euphrates. And when we get to the Eden story, I will explain that. But this is the river they're talking about. So we know that the Garden of Eden was somewhere in this area right in here. And Dr. Lamsa came from a place up in this area, and I have pictures of this too. But it's too hard to show too difficult to show here on the screen because I don't have it on screen. I have it on a picture frame where Dr. Lamsa came from, and he came from here. This is where everyone fled from the persecution and stuff, and they were in this area. And the Assyrians, when they were taken captive by the Babylonians, some of them they fled up in here. And a lot of the ancient Syrians, they kept the Aramaic language going. They kept all the ancient customs going up in this area in here. Turkey, at that time of Dr. Lamsa, owned this area all up in here. But this is where Dr. Lamsa came from. Okay. So now we go down into here. And the first 11 chapters of the book of Genesis deals with all of this in here, and some of the nations and how they spread out from here and what happened. Okay, so now on here is the river Tigris. Assyria, the capital of Assyria was Nineveh. Nineveh, which means, and that comes from the word for fish, and that's why they called it Nineveh. Okay, and the capital was actually sitting right on the side of the river. In other words, one of the walls of this ancient city was built right on the bank of the Tigris River right here. And at one time, Ashur was the main city, but then the capital became Nineveh. Ashur, where did we get this name from? This is the god of the Assyrians was called Ashur. Ashur is this right in here, but this was a city also. Some major cities, as I'm going to tell you in a few more minutes, some of the major cities was the home of the gods. They ruled over that particular city. So the god Ashur, although he was the god of all the Assyrians, ruled over this city, Ashur. That was his home base. Okay, now we go down the river Euphrates. Along the side here was known as Elam. Elam. And today, this is where Persia, in the ancient world, it was Persia and Media. Media was here and Persia was in here. Today, this is all known as Iran. So you can get a picture of this, all right? When we talk about Iran and what they're doing and saying, since we're dealing with them, the United States is dealing with them, this is the area we're talking about, which is coming right off of the Tigris, but inland more, and it's all in this area in here. And now in the ancient world, the major place was called Sumer. Sumer. This is all in here. And the major cities were these three cities. Eridu, or this is where Abraham came from, and this is Uruk. Uruk is the city where Gilgamesh ruled. Gilgamesh in Uruk. It's close to the sound of Iraq, but it's not. It's called Uruk. And the most famous city in the beginning, and I'm talking about 5,500 BCE. 5,500 BCE. It was probably established around 6,000, but this is the famous city of Eridu. This is called Eridu. And this whole area, what they get, this is called also from here, from this area here, from Egypt all the way up here, and then dropping down in here, forming that shape, would be known as the cradle of civilization. The cradle of civilization, of customs, and all kinds of things. And we get all of what we have today comes from the cradle of civilization. That's why the Bible is so important, because it comes from this area in here. And it talks about this area up in here when we talk about the Eden story and all of that. It's all in here, and you'll deal with the Assyrians, you'll deal with the Chaldeans, King Nebuchadnezzar, and you'll deal with all the Assyrian kings that Israel had to northern Israel had to work against. Was this in this area here? It was you have to understand this simple map, because a lot of things are not in here, which I didn't want to get into. I just wanted the major ancient Mesopotamia, Beth Naharain. So this is what I wanted to show you last week, but couldn't do it. All right. So Eridu, we get agriculture, we get writing, we get so much. In my book, Let There Be Light, I give all the things that we got from ancient Sumer, Babylonia, and Assyria. I have it all in the book, Let There Be Light, when I first open up in the book. And Lamsa, when he came to us lecturing in San Antonio at the church there at Calvary Missionary Church, this is what he talked about. And he was from this area up in here. And what happened is Turkey in 1965, and this is when Lamsa came to us also in 1965, and he brought the newspapers showing, and I took those newspapers and I also sealed it in glass and I put it in a frame and I have it on the walls where Turkey opened up. It says on to the Garden of Eden. They opened up Eden, this whole area in here, for people who were venturesome to go up into this area, because it would really be rough to go into this area up in here. And this is where he came, and this is how he opened up the scriptures to us when he first came to Calvary Missionary Church in San Antonio, Texas. And this is when I was already reading his material. I already had written him. I already had 2 or 3 years behind me when he came in 1965 to lecture for us in San Antonio, Texas. But I already made a thorough study of the only 3 commentaries that he had in existence, and 1 on the Old Testament and 2 on the New Testament. And he eventually stayed with us, and not then in 65, but later he came and was with us for several years. That's where he finished writing his book on the life of Jesus, that was published by Doubleday. And this is when I was working with him heavily, was with him constantly. So I picked him up in the morning, brought him to the church. We ate together. We worked together. I answered his correspondence for him. And working on the book, I turned him over with the church secretary. And this is this is where he was from. And I got to know him very well. And then we started working together. We worked together for about 10 years. Of course, the last 2 or 3 years of his life is when he became ill and he was in California. And I would drive up to California before he became ill, and we made more commentaries on the scriptures together, working together. And that's what I have here on my library. All the commentaries finally were published, but he never got to see him. He passed in 1975, right on my birthday, September 22nd. So I was with Lamsa. I was with his material 3 years before, working with it and teaching from it, but he came to us in 1965. So I have 10 years with him from 65 to 75. 1975 is what we're talking about. And this is what we are presenting here. He was the only translator of the Bible that was translating from his own language. And he was considered the Church of the East, he was considered their #1 scholar. And he's the only one that brought the entire Bible from Aramaic into English. And that's what I was using, and that's what I was teaching at the church. It It was wonderful. Okay, now getting back to the map here again, what we have is, or this is where Abraham came from, and he traveled all the way up. Now, it doesn't say how he did it, whether he went in a caravan up there or whether he got on a boat and did the Euphrates and then went into Padan Aram in this area, Padan Aram. And in Aram, Padan Aram is where all the 12 tribes, well, at least 11 of them were formed in this area here, and then came back down to the ancient Canaan. But here is where Abraham started. This is, we believe, his birthplace. Sometimes scholars, have a different idea, but according to the Bible, it says Ur of the Chaldeans. So the Chaldeans evidently were all in this area here. And Ur used to get flooded a lot from the Persian Gulf here and from the connection in here. There would be, when the rains would come, everything would overflow. And sometimes, several times, they had to rebuild Ur because of the floods. But this is the major city, Eridu. And of course, we're familiar with Babylon. Now, there's one correction I'm going to make on this map. Babylon is not on the west side of the river Euphrates. It's in here. It's right in here where I have the arrow pointing. Babylon was constructed in between the two rivers, and of course very close to the Euphrates. Now Abraham could have taken a boat up here, which they did have, but we don't know. Either he went in caravan up here or with his father and his brothers, and in this area up in here to Haran. This was called Haran, and there he left his family because his father had passed away, and he left his family and then went down into, this is not Syria yet, but he went down into Canaan, the land of Canaan, way here, and Jerusalem would be in this area in here. But he went way south and was in this area. Okay. That's all I'm going to show you on the map. And we're going to go back now into Genesis. And what I was teaching you in Genesis is the first verse, where Brashith Bra Allah. And I translated, God created the essence heaven and the essence earth at the very beginning. I do not start it with in the beginning or at the beginning. I put it at the end because in Aramaic, the subject matter is God created. And in English, the subject is God and what God did. And that is created. And I explained to you that that word create was only used of God because it has to do with something that is beyond human creation, beyond anything that we create. Actually, what we do is we take elements and then, like wood and trees and stuff like that, and create all kinds of things. That's not the same type of creation. This is something that is strictly from the invisible existence itself. Now, I know I read to you last week, and I'm not going to repeat again what I did last week. So what I want to do a little more is to show you when we start with God, Allah, which means the self-existent, what exists of itself, from itself, by itself, through itself, and is not dependent on anything else. But this existence has intelligence. It has intelligence. It feels, it sees, and therefore it's a part of mind. I can also say divine mind created the essence heaven and the essence earth. In Hebrew, the word essence is not there. In Aramaic, the word essence is there. In Hebrew, it uses the word eth, which was pointing to a direct object, which was heaven and earth. So it repeats it twice, the little word eth in Hebrew. But in Aramaic, it's the word yah, spelled the same, pronounced differently, yah instead of eth. And therefore, what it's saying here is the essence that this self-existent brought essence of heaven and the essence of earth. And there's a reason for that. Once you get the first phrase of the first, we call it verse 1, because we made it verse 1 in the 12th century AD. They had no verses until then, okay? So it's a phrase, the first phrase. If you got that, you have the whole idea of creation, that behind everything we see, behind everything we touch, behind everything that we have on the earth and in the sky and in the universe, God is the foundation, the premise. God is the premise of everything. In science, they are now coming to the conclusion, and they've been doing it gradually for several years. Once quantum physics hit science, it began to change everything. And when it did, and we're going to get into some of that tonight, not a lot of it, because I don't want to get into just a science message on the book of Genesis. I wanted to get into the spiritual idea behind it. So it's mind, divine mind, minded. Okay? I'm going to do something different than the Jewish scholar did. I like what the Jewish scholar did, which I mentioned last week. God godded. He used the noun God and made it a verb for created, because this is only used of God. That's why he says God godded the heavens and the earth, which means that there is a power that is beyond our comprehension, beyond what we can touch. But like I was telling you last week, that even how did that one single cell know, or particle know, how to do all the things it was doing? It had to have an intelligence in it. Had to. Absolutely had to. Or it couldn't do what it did. And that is part of mind. That's the part of mind. Remember, don't think brain, please. This is only the receptor of mind. It's the receptor of mind, not the mind. The mind is bigger. Your consciousness is bigger. And we'd have to get into quantum physics for that. And I'll do a little bit of it, but not much. If you want to, there's several books I can recommend for you if you want to get into that, about creation and how we're seeing now. Scientists, more and more and more scientists are now saying what is fundamental in creation, what's behind the tree, what's behind everything, is consciousness. So if we're talking about consciousness, we're talking about mind. We're talking about an intelligence. We're talking about something that is beyond what we can figure out, because we are limited in our physical appearance. But science, for a long time, ever since when they began to break from religion, though, science began to see everything was physical, material. So then they said, well, the consciousness comes from the brain. No, they're finding out that is not so. We have more and more empirical evidence that consciousness is more than the brain, and the materialism cannot produce mind cannot produce mind or consciousness, cannot do it. In fact, they tried to find out how it can, but they can't. So many scientists are moving to the fact that what is the foundation of all life, the foundation of the universe. The universe is teeming with mind, with mind. So mind, I put it, minded the essence heaven and the essence earth. Minded it. In other words, like the Jewish scholar that did, God godded the essence heaven and the, because I'm doing it from Aramaic, but he used the Hebrew. He just says God godded the heavens and the earth. In other words, what is in there is an intelligence behind it all. That's what you got to get. If you got that, you got it. And heaven and earth, the sky and the earth. Of course, that's all the same. Once you got that, you got the whole picture. This is not a man. It is mind. It is mind. Mind that is intelligent. Mind that feels. Mind that sees. That's why when people have an NDE, they can see, feel, and they see something totally different. Okay. Remember, God is not a man, nor a woman. You got to get that. So it is spirit, mind, consciousness is spirit also. Okay. So then it goes on. That's the first verse. The essence. God is working with the essence. Okay. The second verse. And the earth, it says, Wara Hot Tov Uvo. In other words, the earth, it's always translated as the earth, I just translated it, and the earth was chaotic. In other words, it didn't have the form that we now have. It didn't have trees, nothing. It just was a mass, and therefore we would say chaotic. And that's what it's used here. So it's telling us that when, and now remember this, you got to remember that even though it's describing all this, because even in the ancient Egyptian stories of creation, everything starts in darkness and in chaos, and everything had to be worked out. So this is ancient belief. And now we're going to find out what God did. Now you have to remember, no one was there to see God doing anything. First of all, you wouldn't see God. You don't see God. And I'm going to explain how you visualize this when we go into each step of creation. I'll show you how you can really see it, but not God. God cannot be seen. That's why God is not described. All other ancient stories, and as I showed you in the map, did I take the map down? Let me take the map down. All the ancient stories show the gods and the goddesses and the beauty, and they made statues of them and all that so you could see them and the stories about them, and they were human, like human beings. They were man's. This is man's idea, and how they explained all of creation was through the gods. And in fact, how we got heaven and earth in the ancient world before this creation story was written is they took the two major gods, Apsu and Tiamat. Tiamat was a dragoness. She was a dragoness, and she represented the salt water. But the god Marduk from Babylon came and split her in two. And when they split her in two, the dragon in two, became heaven and earth. I mean, heaven and the sea. heaven and the sea separated. She represented the salt water. That this is how the ancients understood it. And also you can trace where the gods came from. If you notice the Hebrew God, there is no description of him. Absolutely. And I say him because I don't know what to say it if you want to, but that sounds terrible. But it's not a he or a she, but it sounds, like nothing. So you'll have to excuse me if I use him, but it's not a he, but it's not a she either. It is spirit God, is mind God, is a form of consciousness. Okay. So is consciousness, and it's universal consciousness, universal mind. Once you understand that, then you can see what is happening here. This is absolutely it is taking down all these ancient stories, because all the gods and goddesses were part of nature, whereas this God is distinct from nature. Mind is distinct from nature. Its creativeness is distinct. And that's what you have to see when you're reading this here. And I'm familiar a lot with what's going on in science and what is taking place there, because I read a lot of that all the time, and the latest that's coming out all the time. And you will have to read something like that to get what's behind it, but it confirms more of what spiritual understanding, the metaphysical understanding of heaven and earth, is what we're getting here. A metaphysical understanding, or the word spiritual understanding. And it coincides with the science that is bursting with all of this now today. Okay. So here, in this part here, before it starts in the next verse, what I just gave you, and the earth was chaotic. In other words, things had to be formed, things had to take shape. Okay. And we go to the third verse, and it says, Uheshocha al ape. What I just said in Aramaic is, and I'm reading it from the actual Aramaic text itself, and Hebrew's the same thing. It says the same thing. And darkness was upon the face of, in Aramaic, they say, tohma. In Hebrew, it's tima. Just the opposite. Tahim, Tahom is what they say in Hebrew, because I don't have it in front of me. I'm trying to do it by memory. Tahom. Here, and I read mostly Aramaic now, but here it's same letters, same identical letters, just pronounced differently. And that's the deep. In other words, this mass, the mass of the earth, was hidden in the deep. This mass. So this is we're getting a picture here. And it says, and darkness was upon the deep, the face of the deep. And the spirit, Waruche dalacha. A lot of people like to translate this as, and the wind from God. I don't. I like the old way, and I still keep it that way. Rucha does mean wind, by the way, besides spirit. Why did they call the winds rucha? Because you feel the wind. You can't see it. The only fact you would see wind is if the wind was coming and knocking over trees, or shaking the tree, or shaking the limbs, all of that. You see it in the sense of you feel the pressure of the wind. You feel it. And that's how spirit is. Spirit is like that. You can't see it really. Wind all by itself, you can't see it. It has to move something for you to know it's there and moving it. Or if the wind is hitting your face. but you actually can't see it fully as we do. I see you or you see me, okay? So that's why I still like to keep it and the God spirit, because it's the creative spirit of God. Marakpa. Marakpa. I love that word, marakpa. In Hebrew, it's marakpeth. Peth. It's still, it comes from the word rachma. Rachma, which is the word for compassion and mercy. It means something with feeling. This wind had feeling in it. This spirit had wind in it. It's God's spirit. It has feeling in it. That's what that word barakba. And this is what they also translated. It trembles. It shakes like this. Why? Because it feels. Why is it trembling? Why is it so it's trembling? Marakpa or rakpet in Hebrew. Either way, it's the same word again. Okay. And al apemeya. Al apeme. Al means upon. The spirit, this trembling, feeling spirit, like the wind, was upon the face, what? Of the waters. In other words, so the deep meant that a mass was covered in water. And now this trembling, hovering is not a good word there. It should be, it's trembling, shaking with emotion, with force, with energy. Do you feel it? Can you see it? That's how the spirit moves in your own soul, in your own heart. And we're going to get more into how spirit works with us, because this is what it's revealing. It's revealing how consciousness works with us. And I'm going to show you as we go through this story. All right, let's continue to go on. Remember, if you have questions, be sure to put it in the Q&A. I forgot to announce that at the beginning. Okay. So then it goes on to say, in the Aramaic text and in the Hebrew, it's the same thing. And it says, and it's moving and brooding. Now it's setting the stage. Something's going to happen. Something tremendous is going to happen. What is it? What is this that's going to happen? All right, let's go to the next verse. Wamaralacha. Wamaralacha. Ne we nuhra. Wa nuhra. What? I want to set the stage here for you. I just read it in the Aramaic. Wamaralacha. Nehwe nuhra. Wa nuhra. All right, what are we doing here? All right, I want you to get the picture. So you have here, you have a mass that is covered in water. And you have something like the wind, because it's moving the water. It's moving the water and trembling over it, being is compassionate over it. It's setting the scene because something's going to happen. And what do we read next? And commanded or said God. That's how it literally says it in Aramaic. Wammar is and said or and commanded, because the word amar in Hebrew and in Aramaic is the same. It's the same. And it means and commanded or said or exclaimed. I can use all those words in English to express what's happening. In other words, thought is vibrating and speaking. All right, look, what am I doing? I'm vibrating right now. I am vibrating. And when I speak, I'm vibrating, and I'm in the air. I'm creating vibrations, but I'm making sounds, And the sounds are giving you information, right? The words I use. But it's a vibration at the same time I am speaking. And it says, and God commanded or said, and this means the self-existent mind, that's Allah, divine, universal mind. I say universal because we deal with the physical, and we see separation, we see divisions, we see all of this, a tree separated from the ground and the grass and the flowers, everything. We see it all, and that in the universes. We see all the many universes. That's why we speak of the universal mind, because behind it all is the universal mind, is the Allah, is what we say in English, God. Allah, Allah, the self-existent mind, the universal mind. And it vibrated, and now it made sounds. Now it made sounds. And what did it sound? It says, Nehwe. We say that in the Lord's Prayer, don't we? We say it in the Lord's Prayer when I say, Awun which may and Nithka Dachma, Nehwe Sewiana. You hear Nehwe? Nehwe Sewiana. Okay? So, but there's that same word. What I just did, that word nehwe means let be. Let be. That's when I say it in the Lord's Prayer, nehwe sewianach, I'm saying let be your will, your wish, your desire. So here it's nehwe noohra. That's the name of our foundation, Noohra Foundation. Light, enlightenment. Let there be light, enlightenment. So in this void, you might say, with this unformed stuff, with just water was there and some mass was there, we say empty. In quantum physics, it's called quantum vacuum. It's called quantum vacuum. This is in quantum physics now. Quantum vacuum carries information. And interesting, isn't it? This is what scientists have discovered. Carries information. It's a vacuum, yet it has information in it. And they give examples of how it expresses through us. In this vacuum, in this quantum vacuum, we're talking about quantum science now. In this vacuum, our mind, listen to what I'm saying, is attuned to it, and the neurons in our brain picks up on it. This is how we get geniuses. This is how we got Mozart. Mozart, he heard all these things. Where is he hearing it? He's hearing it from the quantum vacuum. So what we have here now is the quantum vacuum. And what we hear then is the vibration. Nehwe, nehwe, nuhra. Let, literally, let be light. In Aramaic, there's two ways to command, a direct command or a polite command. And in this case, it's a polite command, like when we do the prayer, let your will be done. Let be done your will, literally. Let be your will, literally. That's all it says, is let be your will. So, nehwe sewianach. Sewianach, the KH sound at the end, nach, means your. Sewiana is will, so I drop the A and I say sewianach. meaning your will, and the command before it is nehwe, let be your will, of course, on earth, even as it is throughout the universe. Okay, in other words, what's been done, how the earth came, let that will manifest through us right here on earth. Beautiful in the prayer when you understand the power of what you're saying when you say the Lord's Prayer. It's powerful. What Jesus composed. Absolutely beautiful. But here in the creation story, it's nehwe. Again, nehwe nuhra. Let be light. So that's the vibration. Let be light. I don't see a human being. I don't see a person saying this. It is in the self-existent. It is a part of it. For instance, when you hear a thought, when you get the old expression we used to use, I don't hear it anymore. Eureka! Whoo, I got something. A hunch, an idea. That was a vibration that was coming from the quantum vacuum that your neurons picked up from from divine mind, which is not just stuck in here, but over our entire body. This is how spiritual healing is done too. And this is what Mary Baker Eddy found out too in Christian Science. She just didn't use these terms. She used other terms to acknowledge all this, but this is how it is. And when you get into that creative state and you're open to it, it takes place. So I don't see what I see is the darkness. I see darkness. And this darkness, there was like a wind. You could feel a presence. You could feel a presence that was trembling, that was shaking like this, trembling. And what is happening? All of a sudden, a vibration comes. Let be light. And the next word, and was light. Because it's dark now. Everything is darkness. And all you do is feel in the dark, but can't see in the dark. The idea, there was evidently water everywhere. Picture this. And what they are doing here, they're absolutely turning ancient Mesopotamia and all the stories of creation upside down and showing all the beginnings of a true scientific, what we call scientific and spiritual metaphysical understanding of where we are and what has happened. What we call Earth, what we call the universes, all those things. They're only pictures of something that's really behind it. We're getting what was coming and what was working behind all of the appearances of everything. The Earth is a phenomenon. Galaxies are phenomenon. And when you understand that, phenomenon means an appearance. You have a form, a shape. And now it says, let there be light. But this light was coming from existence. Everything is light. Everything is light. Everything. We can reduce everything, matter, all to light. Everything is all light. And that's first. But it also, the spiritual meaning behind it is enlightenment. For us, it means enlightenment. Spirit is always there, always to bring enlightenment, to bring understanding, to bring peace, to bring joy, to bring all this. This is where it's going. Okay. I didn't realize time was getting away from me because I did so much explaining on the map. Now that I've got into the story, I can see that I got to leave some time for the questions, because I see I have 4 of them coming up right here. So what I want to show you then is that behind it, right now, this is still working today in you. You can hear God, but the trouble is the voice of God isn't what we expected. The voice of God, we expected, boom, 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 I am speaking. Just like when Moses heard the voice, with Cecil B. DeMille, I think that was the most awful in the Ten Commandments, when the bush caught on fire and it wasn't a normal fire. This is in a vision in that Moses was having, and it was glowing and burning, but not consumed. It wasn't consumed. And when Cecil B. DeMille did the voice for it, he says, Moses, Moses. It was terrible the way he did the voice of God. No, it should have been Moses. Moses. Moshe. Moshe. Very soft. Very soft. Almost missing it. Remember, Elijah had to learn about the voice of God. He had to learn it wasn't in the thunder. It wasn't in the noise. It wasn't in the earthquake. It was a still, means quiet, small voice. Quiet, small voice. And that's why sometimes we get something and we don't listen to it because it sounds too much like us, or just a thought going through your head, when it's the voice of God speaking to you and you just don't realize it or know it because it's so light. It's not, I wish God would come boom like that and knock it into me sometime, because sometimes I hear something from God and I know it and I think, oh, that was just probably me. And then I find out later it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was coming. I was getting information from spirit, from things that created everything. And this is what Genesis is showing us here. I think it's absolutely marvelous. And when you keep yourself open to it, this is why ministers need to be more open for this to come through, this to come through out to people. How do you think Jesus did it? He didn't train the way most people train, and he was teaching fishermen, no seminarians, fishermen. Fishermen. They probably didn't even know how to read and write. Most of them. Some of them maybe did. Yet he was able to teach them and train them. And they didn't go to any seminary. Simple. And that's why sometimes they missed what Jesus was talking about and created a whole new idea, which I'm going to be getting into when I get into what's coming up in February 8th on a Saturday, second Saturday in February. I'm going to be doing the lost gospel, okay? And explain how it got lost and how it got twisted and everything else. All right, I'm going to stop right here on the 3rd verse. So I will continue with that next week, okay? Let's go now to the questions. All right. Can you please talk about how to access the kingdom of God inside in these crazy political times? How can we achieve the peace within? Oh, yes, that's a wonderful, wonderful question. How we can achieve the peace within. All right, let me move it over here. Okay, what it is your relationship with God. You got to put God first. If you put God first, all the other political stuff will take second place. It does not. But I understand what you're going through, because who wouldn't feel what you're just saying and what you just asked me here? It's been a mess, a real mess for us here. And we're not used to that in the States, but we've been through it. Okay. When you sit down and settle in your own heart your relationship with God, if you need to repent, repent. Meaning turn to God. Turn to God. Open yourself to God. Open to the Spirit. Open to what I've been talking about. Open to, if you want to use a scientific term, open to the quantum vacuum. Okay? Huh? It's there. It's the vacuum is where you will find God. In the chaos. We just went through it now in Genesis, in the chaos. And let light be, and light will hit you. You will understand. You know, I've been in the dark on this political situation. Not anymore. Not anymore. I see it clearly, but I'm at peace, and pray for what is happening. Okay. So you have to open yourself to it. You've got to do that. Until you do that, you won't have that peace. How do you do it? You just sit down, shut up, and open yourself to God. You know, instead of all the yakking that's going on in your head, all the chaos, all the watery and mass, and hear God say, let light be. Enlightenment. Enlightenment is peace. Enlightenment is joy. Enlightenment is understanding. Not trying to figure everything out, but you have that peace. That is the enlightenment, the light. Wonderful question that you asked here. Beautiful question. It tied in exactly with what I was teaching tonight. This is what's important that you get when you read the book of Genesis. Most people don't teach it this way at all. Get the truth of it here. That's the peace within. Let be peace in your soul, in your emotions, in your heart, in your mind. Let be peace. And peace was, and light was. It says, and was light. That's how they say it in Aramaic, okay? And in Hebrew, Hebrew's the same way. No different. I think that is good enough on that question. Let's go to the next one. In the introduction to Genesis, it says that God did not create evil. You see, in the introduction to Genesis. Oh, yeah, in the book you're talking about. Okay. God did not create evil, therefore evil is not real. What does that mean? It means evil is something that we create. It's something that we create, and when we stop creating it, it ends it. It is not real. Something real you can't change. You cannot change it. But you can change evil. You can take in and absolutely change it. That's what it means by it's not real. Of course, when someone does something evil, that is, we know that, we feel it, we know it. But what is meant there and is that you can change it. If it was a fixed, true, living thing, you cannot change it. Cannot. But this we can. We can stand up to evil. We can take evil down. We can strip it. And that's what it's meant by, and you're talking about in the commentaries there, and in Aramaic light on Genesis. Yeah. Okay. I hope you got that clear enough. It seems real. Of course, because people do it and practice it, okay? When they quit practicing it, it's no longer real, okay? It's no longer there. And you can't do that with something that's real. Cannot change it. All right, let's go to the next one. Please do recommend some books on quantum physics. Thank you. Well, I would recommend, and you can go online for this. There's a wonderful, I've been reading him for years, and I started consciousness studies when I was in California, and I was in the church in California, the Church of Daily Living. When I was there, I was doing all kind of consciousness research. Then I still have it in my library here on consciousness. But I would recommend Bernardo all of a sudden his last name is going from me. Bernardo Castro. Bernardo Castro. And his book is, you go on Amazon, you can get it. Something about peaking beyond, something like that. But if you go by his name, Bernardo Castro, and his book on peaks, look at the word. It'll have in the title peaks, and get that one. That's simple. There's another one that goes into, but it goes way back. It goes way back. Let's see if I can think of the name of that one. Talks about the subtitle. I remember the subtitle about the mind of God, but what is the original title? I can't think of it right now because this goes way back to 2004 or 6, something like that, when this one was written. And the whole bunch of them, I had a whole bunch of them that I have on my shelf right up here, and I don't want to take the time to get it. Well, next week, what I'll do is I'll get a list and give it to you for next week. Okay, I'll do that I promise. That'll be the first thing I do. Is before we do anything, teach anything, I'll give you a list. And because I have all these books, I've always kept them. And when I traveled, they traveled with me. Okay. All right. Let me see. Oh, all of a sudden, the one that was written in 2000 and 2004 or 5, it's called Punk Science. Punk Science. Into the Mind of God. Punk Science into the Mind of God. And don't ask me about the author because I can't remember the author's name. And that's another one that does it easy, step by step by step. But the one by Bernardo Castro is really fabulous. It is fabulous. He goes into near-death experience. You touch on anything, even politics and the news and all. It's all in there, all on science. You got to get that one. Peaks Beyond. Peaks Beyond. It's something like that. The title of that one by Bernardo Castro. Okay, let's go down to the next one. Who wrote Genesis and how did they get their information about creation? Okay, there were many, excellent questions. There were many stories of creation before this one, many, and it's scattered throughout the entire Bible. It's just that I'm not teaching that, but it's scattered throughout the scriptures. But they were more like the ancient Mesopotamian type of stories. God was doing battle with a dragon. God was doing battle with this and battle with that, because that's what they believed. All of nature was a part of the gods and goddesses. But the priests and the scribes got together and brought together. This was already in existence, probably by a priest, a prophet priest. We have several prophet priests. Ezekiel was a priest. Jeremiah was a priest, and they were prophets. So it's probably by a prophet priest. And they saw how what all the other Mesopotamian stories were saying about creation did not coincide with this understanding. First of all, one God and one universe. One. And it was the scriptures that put the word universe, one verse. See? Uni is one verse. Universe. And it is they that put it together. So probably it was a prophet priest and the scribes got together and put this together. Now, when was it written? Scholars say it was written in the 6th century, but some of it was already there, but they just put it together probably in the 6th century. But again, this is what scholars say. I don't know how much we can bank on that. All right. I do mention that in my book on the mysteries of creation. Okay. All right. I think that answers your question. And then I have just one more here. Let me get to it. is there a PDF I can download the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic, but spelled out phonetically, following along and say it out loud? No, in my book, Unity published this book. I call it Setting a Trap for God, because the word to pray means to trap. In other words, when God speaks and everything, you trap it. And in prayer, you open yourself to trap what God is telling you, to catch it, see, to catch it and to work with it. So in here, I have the Aramaic and the English pronunciation is all right in there. Let me find that page. Here it is. Here it is. Here's the Aramaic. Here's how to pronounce it in Aramaic. And here's the translation here. And it's the whole prayer. I did the whole prayer this way. There's the whole prayer all in Aramaic. But then in the book, I broke down every single word. Okay, here it is. The first word, awun, and there's the English here, awun. Then the next word, duash meya, and then I have the English, duash meya. Okay, that's what we have. All right, and the next one, what book are you using tonight that I can get to so I can follow along with you when you speak in Aramaic? What book? You mean the Bible in Aramaic? Is that what you want? I'm not too sure what you, when you speak in Aramaic, I can follow. What book are you using tonight? You mean, I don't know what book you mean here. You mean the Aramaic Bible itself? You can't get it. It's hard to get. I can get you the whole New Testament in Aramaic, but I can't get you the Old Testament in Aramaic. You have to order it on Amazon, and it costs $150. This one. This is the complete Bible, both Old and New Testament, all in Aramaic, if you wanted to follow. And this is the Near Eastern Cross here. This is what you're seeing. But if you want, I don't know how else to tell you about that. Okay, let me see. I think there's one more. Oh my goodness, there's several more. I can't get to all of them. I'm going way past my time. Let's see, who wrote Genesis? I already did that one. I already answered one about the, but you just do one more and then close. When Christ, let's see, what book do you use in it? When Christ and old prophets said, Anuhu, I am he, Aniu, is how it would be. Isaiah from ancient days, I am he. John 18, I am he, Jesus said. Would you please share Aramaic perspective? He, spirit. No, I am he. I am he. It's just like as it is in English, there's nothing more to say about that. It's very clear. Would you please share Aramaic 43:13? I am he. Well, I have to have the whole scripture. I just can't just do I am he, I am he. Yeah, I have to have the entire scripture. I have to look it up in Isaiah 43:13 and read the whole thing. And see who is speaking, and is Isaiah speaking in God's name here, in the Lord's name here, what it is. I have to see the whole thing. When Jesus said to the woman at the well, I am he, meaning I am the anointed one, the Mashiach. The Mashiach is all he's saying. I will check that for you in Aramaic. It's different. It's ennau. And now, actually, I would say, and now, I am, and now, is how I would say that in Aramaic, but that's what it means, okay? I would go into it. I'll have to check those scriptures for you. And I have to close the session now because I've gone way over and I don't want to keep people up too late. So bless you, everyone. I will continue with these questions next week if I can pull them out before I go. All right. Love you, everyone. And have a wonderful rest of the week. Bless you. And I know God is moving through you.